So welcome everyone. My name is Amanda Decker and I oversee alumni relations and professional development here at the USC Suzanne Dworak-Peck School of Social Work. And I am joined by my colleague here, Josh Watson. Josh, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Amanda. Thank you all for being here. I am Josh Watson, Assistant Dean at the USC Suzanne Dworak-Peck School of Social Work. I oversee student affairs. I advise our student organization. I'm the Academic Integrity Coordinator for the school, monitoring students' academic progress. And this has been a really great collaboration with Amanda, this monthly series on student success. We're invite alums as well, and so anyone can join us. We thought this would be a really great topic, regardless if you're a brand new student or if you're looking to go into a job after graduation. You know, we may have some students here that are nearing graduation, whether it be December or May. So we thought this would be a good topic to cover. So it's great to be here.
Yeah, so we have this monthly series where we bring back alums and kind of experts in the field, as well as faculty members, to talk about a specific topic. So our first 2 months, we covered just a general welcome to the profession with tips and tricks, and you can find that on Dworak-Peck Connect, which is our online networking platform. I'll put in links as we're chatting. So be sure, if you haven't signed up for Dworak-Peck Connect, you can connect with folks like Brian on Dworak-Peck Connect. So I highly encourage you to do that, and others in similar fields, similar interests that you have. You can find a mentor, be a mentor, anything like that. So definitely sign up for Dworak-Peck Connect. As Jen OConnor will cover, there are tons of resources both at the USC Career Center and on Dworak-Peck Connect for you, available as you're job hunting, doing your resume, cover letters, interview prep, anything like that. So tonight's topic, we're covering resumes and cover letters, and we will be covering at a future topic interviewing. So stay out on the look for that in the second half of the academic year. So I'd love our panel to introduce themselves. So today I'm going to just briefly have you introduce yourselves. So Jen OConnor from the USC Career Center, would you please introduce yourself for our students?
Sure, I'm super happy to be here. So my name is Jen OConnor and I work in the USC Career Center, and the USC is a decentralized campus, meaning that there's a whole bunch of different career centers scattered around campus. And I happen to be in the one that serves everybody on campus. So anybody can come to the Career Center no matter what, and get resources and things like that. And so we're not specialists by any means, but because we serve everybody, we have a lot of different resources that I'll talk about later. And I've known Amanda for a couple of years, and she's just done a great job. And I've known Josh ever. True story. So anyways, super happy to be here.
All righty. And Professor Jen Parga, would you please introduce yourself for our students that don't know? I'm sure they know you.
I don't know. I don't know if they know me. I could be the surprise speaker. But I'm Jen Parga. I actually teach on the VAC. I live in San Diego. I'm an associate professor, specifically in field, coming from the Social Change and Innovation Department for alumni. That's the COPA, COBE. I mean, there's so many. Macro, we'll just say community focus, business administration. So that was the focus that I did. I have my BSW, MSW, super social worker, love the profession. I'm the co-chair for the NASW USC caucus, an advisor for Trauma Informed LA, certified in trauma sensitive yoga, kind of run the gamut in terms of applying for jobs and getting jobs and not getting jobs. So I don't know, maybe particularly qualified to be here, but I'm happy to be here. So thanks for inviting me.
And Brian Ross, would you please introduce yourselves?
Yes, thanks, Amanda. So yeah, my name's Brian Ross, a class of 2006, graduated, got my MSW from USC, fight on. And I actually concentrated in mental health and was part of the GSWEC program. I'm not sure if they still have that, but that was, yeah, awesome. Thanks, Jen. Awesome program, and I definitely recommend it if you're into providing social services to the geriatric population, older adults. And currently I am a senior manager of talent acquisition for a company called Verifi that was actually acquired a couple years back by a little company that I'm sure you all heard of called Visa. So technically now I'm a Visa employee, so, and have been for the past 2 years. And so I head up talent acquisition for Verifi, the acquired entity.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So today's conversation, we do have some prepared questions, but we really want this to help service. So if you have any, so if you have any specific questions for our panelists as we're going along, we'll be able to, or we'll be keeping an eye on the chat dialogue, and be sure to interweave those questions into the conversation. And so Jen O'Connor, I'd love for you to kind of just give us a little bit of an overview about the services that the USC Career Center offers. And I did give you co-host privileges, so you can share your screen.
All right. Okay. So I'm just going to go through real quickly, because those of you who know me know I talk a lot and it's a problem. So I put slides together so you can see it visually and not have to like listen to me talk the whole time. So let me just show you real quickly. I'll put share screen so I get this. It's like just real quick, but here. Oh, wait, let me do this one here. I changed the setting in my Zoom, and sometimes you just don't know what you're gonna get yourself into. Okay, let me see. This is not going to be long, I promise. But I just want to. Ooh, it worked perfectly for 2 seconds. Okay, tell me, is this looking good?
It's in presenter mode, so we can.
Okay, well, how about that? Is that better? I'm not going to mess with this too much. Does that look a little better?
Yeah, it's just small.
I'm not okay. I'm not going to even worry about it. But okay, so because I don't want to spend the time on it. But so let me just show you real quickly. So this is me, not a big deal. I just put in here because why not? But can you at least see the website name?
Yes.
Okay, so this is our website, and the reason why I put that on here is because with the pandemic, a lot of our resources we were putting them online, and we loved it, and so we just decided just to keep them online, and you know, we still have in-person resources. But just so that y'all know, here's our website, and there is a section for students, and there's a section for alumni right in here. So no matter what, we've got you covered. So just real quickly, and again, I'm going to run through these so fast, but we basically work with students and alumni from all the way from the beginning of like, who am I? What do I love to do? All the way to like, oh my gosh, I got a job, help me negotiate for a salary, right? So we do the whole everything, right? So it's a lot, and we do it for everybody on campus. So again, it's a lot. It's a lot of fun, keeps me on toes for sure. But we needed a place to put all this information. So we put together this website. So here you go, students, alumni, employers, all sorts of stuff. So there's a resource called a Smart Resume that Amanda and I think how we worked together. The very, very beginning was I was asking her for a ton of resumes and things, and I was asking her for resume templates. You can actually put your social work resume into this tool called VMOC, Smart Resume, and it'll critique your resume based on other social worker resumes that we have in there. And I put probably, God, at least 1,000 resumes in there. So it'll critique your resume based on other social worker resumes and show you, you know, what things to be improved on and things like that. So there's that one. And again, I'm going really fast. So Brianna, I see you, but I'm going to go fast because there's so many other things to talk about with the other panelists. Interview support. This is one of our newer resources. It's called Big Interview. If you go to our website in the student section, you'll find it. You can actually record yourself interviewing tailored questions and watch yourself, hear yourself, get tips on interviewing and things like that. It's very, very good. For those of you who are, you know, thinking about moving to a different country or even a different city, there is this Going Global piece where not only could it be for international students, but also for folks in the city guide section. You can actually go in here and learn what it would like. I'm from Philadelphia, right? So if I want to learn about living in Philadelphia, what's the cost of living? How do I find a job? You can go to Going Global in the city guide in here and find that. For those of you who are international students, we have a resource called InterStride, which will help international students kind of learn the nuances of the US job search if you're choosing to stay here. So there's visa information, all sorts of stuff. Not your kind of visa, Brian, the other kind of visa. Just kidding. But then there's a resource that we just implemented this past summer called Your Next Step. It used to be called Career Beam, but those of you who had never played with Career Beam, Your Next Step walks students all the way, and alumni both. We actually have this for alumni too. Most of these are for alumni also. Who are you? What do you like to do? What's that job called? How do I network? How do I build a resume? Get job alerts, all this kind of stuff. And you get this as a student and as an alum. So, why not? So Amanda talked about the Dworak-Peck Connect. Well, this is my office's version of the Dworak-Peck Connect. Mine is called the Trojan Network. Okay, so Amanda and I worked together to help make sure there was good resources in the Dworak-Peck Connect for the social work students, because again, they wanted resume samples, licensing support, like where do you find a license in different states and things like that. So Amanda, I'm sure can talk about that more, but just so you know, so you all have a network, and the Career Center has a network, and ours is called Trojan Network. I will always say, prioritize what your school is offering first, because it's going to be specialized. I have no problems with that, but use this one as a bonus, because why not? And then I would, kind of along the lines of networking, I just wanted y'all to know, I'm sure you've looked at this before, but just don't forget about LinkedIn for learning about what alumni are doing and who to network with and things like that, because so much of the job search is networking. So I just happened to pull up LinkedIn, and I pulled up all the alumni that were in there from social work, and there's 8,900 of them. And it was nice because it said this is where they're living, this is where they're working, and this list, I cut it off. There's more in there. So when y'all are, having a little time, please do not forget to look at LinkedIn. I know it's not a USC supported resource, but it is very, very good. And we do a lot of instruction with students on how to use LinkedIn to find resources and connections and things like that. And finally, just real quickly, these are so when we switched to pandemic, we did a lot more remote, obviously. So we're still doing the same services we did in person as well, but we just threw in remote as well. So we're still working with people one-on-one, looking at internships and jobs, and looking at resumes and practicing interviewing and networking. But we're doing a lot more of the resources online, and the hope is that you would use the resources online first before you came to us, because it was at 3 o'clock in the morning when I'm sleeping. So anyway, so we do drop-in advising every day, 12 to 3. In the spring, we'll be doing it 1 to 4. And then we do half-hour scheduled advising appointments. So that is it. I talked as fast as I could, Amanda, without stumbling over my words. But if people have questions, I am here to ask. And in fact, what I can do is I can even answer them in a chat while other folks are talking, if that's easier.
Perfect.
So,
thanks so much, Jen.
Yeah, I told you.
Would you mind emailing that to me so I can send it out to everybody?
Sure.
Perfect. So yes, everyone, we will make sure that in the coming days you get a copy of that along with this recording. And so, Brian, I'd love to just ask you a question on just some general tips and tricks as students are looking at their resume. What kind of polishing can they do as they're looking, perhaps for their next internship, if they're, say, first years, or if they're ready to hit that job market because they're graduating this spring?
Yeah, for sure. So I always my biggest advice is, first and foremost, is to have a master resume. This is your master template resume that you have all of your experience on. And it gives you the opportunity to, I know we've all heard the term word vomit, right? It really gives you the opportunity to put all of your experience on one piece of paper, right? Or maybe 2 pieces, or maybe 3 pieces, depending on how much experience you have. And the reason why I do suggest that is so that way you already have this master template. And as you're looking at jobs, right? You're going on these job boards or whatever jobs you're looking at, you're applying to. Now you can tailor that resume to that specific job. And you don't have to think much about it, because all you're doing is now you're removing bullet points. You're focusing your experience now for that specific position. And then to answer your question, Amanda, and I would definitely put on any internship experience. I know I had 2 full years of field experience during my social work program, right? That was real life experience, right? Like I worked at a state hospital, so that was real experience, and I worked at the VA too, right? And so all of that experience is definitely helpful, and you want to showcase that. And you want to show them that, hey, even though it was an internship, this was real, genuine experience that should be counted towards your years of experience.
Great, thank you so much. Professor Parga, do you have any additions to some of the tips that Brian gave us?
Yeah, I mean, I love that. It kind of reminds me of like how in academia we have like a CV and then we just kind of pull stuff out as we do, but chronologically. So I was actually going to address, is it Mara, as question, if that's okay,
Yeah.
in terms of the structure. So you can delineate that transition either by your title or by date. So if you have like the label of the organization where you did your internship and then you put intern from date to date, and then your new title or whatever whatever it was, and then from the new date to present, if that's the case. But that'll indicate it's the same organization, but a new role. But to add, I if this was pre-pandemic, I wouldn't have these answers, but since we're still in the middle of COVID, but I would definitely add some type of, if you were remote, what kind of software you utilize in terms of communication, if you have how you had to pivot during COVID within your organization, if you had to identify, like, I was in person and then went to remote and I learned this new software program so we could communicate digitally and do program management or whatever it is. I would definitely add that. And I've heard recently that some are asking about vaccination status. And so I know that can be a little, there could be some feelings around putting that on your resume. But I think for some employers that will come up as a question and eventually. So if you put it there, it might be a good filter for some agencies.
So Jen O'Connor, we all hear, how long should your resume be? So is there some hard, fast rule about the length of your resume?
Good question. So I as a talker myself, I will say I prefer a one pager because I want the employers to be able to skim it, right? And the other thing is that whatever's on the second page, they might not even read the dang thing. So you have to be really careful about what you're putting on that second page. So in my opinion, you should be keeping it to one page. Now you can go wild on LinkedIn and have it be super long, but I like the one pager. Honestly, I think you should be able to get that to one page and make it sing for the employers.
And Brian, how do students or alums, how do you start, especially if you do have a longer resume, maybe you had some prior, I think it was, I can't remember who had asked the question.
Like five years of experience.
Yeah, you had experience before. And so say you've had several positions, how do you bring that resume down to one page?
Yeah, and I go back and forth on this, I'll be honest. As somebody who looks at resumes on a daily basis as part of my job, I'll be honest, I get some folks that have one page and I get some folks that have maybe 2 pages. And I think the biggest thing is if you're gonna do more than one page, just really make sure that first page is gonna grab the attention, and then if that second page is just gonna be additional experience or any additional maybe information that you want them to know, but it's going to be more secondary than primary. And so I kind of go back and forth with that. I'll be honest, 3 pages I think is definitely too much because I don't get to that third page usually at that point. But I think really it's also, you have to think about how many years you want to go back and what's relevant. So I think it's got to be a balance, as I kind of talked about before, and really tailoring your resume. And I think if you have that master template that I talked about before, I mean, that could be 10 pages long. It doesn't matter because you're not sending that out, right? So when you do actually tailor it, you'll probably end up finding that you're going to get to that one page.
Now, Jen O'Connor, is there anything students should not be including in their resume? Can you kind of describe an example of why our particular resume that you've reviewed for a position was not adequate. And I'll open this to Jen O'Connor, but then Brian, I'd love for you to weigh in.
No, it's a good question. I mean, I think part of it, I mean, to go up with Brian said, these things have to be tailored. They do not want to hear about things that have nothing to do with them. So I always tell the students, like, write the resume first, but really know what they're asking for in the job description. And don't just throw a bunch of stuff in there because you're like, this is my work history. They don't want a work history. They want to know, how have you built the skills that we need to hire you for? So I'm always telling students, like, look, think every line has to be worth reading. If it's not worth it to the reader, then I say just get rid of it, because it's not really making, it might not be worth it to them. So for example, sometimes what happens is a student might put one thing on a line. They'll put like DSM, whatever, and I'm like, could you combine that with something else? Like put maybe a bunch of different assessments you've used, not just DSM as one line, because they haven't really used the line effectively or efficiently, So I say, know that job description will translate your experience to them, because you should be connecting the dots for them. Don't make them connect the dots about you, because that's not what they're doing. They're skimming. And by the way, computers might be looking at these things before a person. So you have to deal with applicant tracking systems. So not to scare you too much, but I'm just saying, like, applicant tracking systems are a thing. I'm sure Brian uses them all the time, right? That not big interview, the smart resume tool that I sent you, and you'll get it later in the PowerPoint. That is applicant tracking system friendly. Like I have worked with the development team to make sure that the resumes that come out of that are applicant tracking system friendly. So you just have to listen to the advice and just do it. I mean, bullets, and don't write paragraphs, so they're not going to read a paragraph. So things like that. So that's my best advice.
I mean, I would say for me, one of the things that I don't need to see, and not to sound harsh, I don't care about your GPA. You graduated, great. Your GPA, trust me, is not going to matter in the working world. Nobody cares, like, in all honesty. So I would say for me, that's one thing that I don't think you need to put on there. I think it's enough to show that to me, it's impressive that you made it through a master's program, right? Or an undergrad program. Like, that's all we need to know. The other piece of it is that, as Jen O'Connor was saying about looking at that job description, keep in mind, when you look at the responsibilities, chances are the first 4 to 5 listed are the core responsibilities. Those are the most important. So that's where I would recommend you tailoring your resume to, is looking at those 4 to 5 responsibilities that are listed on the job description, looking at your experience and tying that together. So for example, this responsible for such and such. Okay, where in my past job was I? And even if you don't have that exact experience, just try to connect the dots. Try to relate it, because there is something that I look at as a talent acquisition professional called transferable skills. And transferable skills, like, you may not have the exact skill that they're looking for, but you have a foundation of that skill that can be built upon.
So I think, especially as we look at some of our students, Professor Parga, how would you suggest that our students who are in their first year describe their first year field placement experience on their resume?
So I think for me, when I think about describing that experience, it's about, especially in relation to applying for a job, or you just mean in general?
I think just in general.
In general, okay. If you're having a hard time thinking of how would I describe this, I'm always a big fan of, putting the place of employment or internship rather, maybe one sentence on like what you did, maybe 2, not a paragraph, and then 2 or 3 bullet points on the achievements that you made or successes you had while in that position. Because folks they may not understand your role or your internship, or that maybe they have a familiarity with the placement, but not necessarily with what you did. So I like having that, the sentence or two of what you did. I had a caseload of 9 to 11 clients. I saw them weekly. I did home visits, case management, and you're detailing kind of like your job, your internship description, and then those successes. If you were able to, I think of this in terms of all facets of social work, micro, meso, macro. So I don't know, like to have something that highlights all of those points. So if you did have clinical casework, maybe it was like I expanded my work from individuals to families, like i.e. I accepted more responsibility. Or maybe your second bullet point is within my groups, I was able to design additional curriculum to create another group based on a need I saw in the community. Or macro level, I partnered with other organizations to blah, blah, blah. So overview and then successes, I think are would be really great for first year.
Now, Brian, when we talk about, because we've already talked about kind of like ideal lengths for resume, what about like gaps in work history, or say, I'm even thinking of my own resume here. I had experience, in my current like type of advancement work. And then I had a 4-year gap where I went and did some other things. And then I came back to advancement work. How would someone go about describing that, especially if we're supposed to keep our resumes down to 1 page or 1 to 2?
Yeah. And, it's interesting. Some folks decide not to do that. Some folks decide to account for it. Funny enough, quick side note, I always ask about it in my phone screens anyway. And I try not to count anybody out because life happens, right? But again, not everybody's going to do, recruiting like I do. So I do get that. But I would say, like, I think it is advantageous to call it out, right? Acknowledge the pink elephant in the room, right? Make it easy on them, because now they don't have to sit here and think about, well, what happened from 2017 to 2020? Like, that's a pretty big gap. What happened? And I think you can just put in a little blurb, right? And just put that almost as if you're putting in a new, like another position. You're just going to put in from that time to that time, like took a sabbatical or had to take care of an ill family member. Like, honesty goes a long way. Like, transparency and honesty go a long way. And if you're just upfront about it, like, you're going to find that humans are going to be human back to you.
Great. So Jen O'Connor, so say if someone's coming into social work from a different undergraduate degree, especially since you deal with a lot of students from all over, and or a different career path, how do you suggest a resume reflects social work as a future forward in their career on their resume?
Super good question. And this happens a lot, actually. So, I mean, I'm grateful that they find where they want to go, quite honestly. So, like, good for you, So I think the majority of the resume winds up being what you did in grad school and not the undergrad stuff. So again, we're translating, right? So not everybody does sociology or psychology or whatever as undergrad. Some of them are like who knows what they are, But when we talk about transferable skills, Brian's right. I mean, it's like you're trying to sell the skills that the folks want to pay you for, and you're not using the other skills, right? So some of them are transferable. But so what I have folks do is, so for example, the first internship or the first field work, sometimes what might need to happen is I will tell students, why don't you put your first year of courses in your resume? If you're feeling like it's something so different, put, here's my degree in social work, this is when I'm graduating, and put relevant coursework, or current coursework includes : and don't put like the prefixes or the numbers, just put like the name of the class, because the rest of the world does not really know what they're talking about these classes. They just know, So anyway, so that, and then, for example, maybe in the skills section, you go a little bit more into detail about these are diagnostic tools I've learned so far, group therapy models, whatever, group interview, whatever you're doing. And then sometimes, depending on where you're at with things, some people actually will put course projects and things like that. And I don't know, you have to really, I think, earlier in the program to be needing to rely on the course projects and the coursework, because normally by then you would have had field work already done, or at least been out there a little bit. But that is how we kind of bridge that gap a little bit, because you're learning great stuff, really great. I've seen these resumes, I've seen them, and it's just, we just have to make sure that, again, we're translating, and you know, you're not going to be carrying your old major for the rest of your life. We're trying to get you to be in the social work world. So, you know, I think it's really interesting to say, you know, I went to school for this, and I really, this experience changed my mind, and now I'm doing this, and I couldn't be happier. So I do not think that you should be ashamed or embarrassed or anything. Just own it, but then say what the takeaways have been. We're all, it's like Brian said, we're human. You know?
Great. Jen Parga, do you want to add on anything?
I do, because I have a lot of students in class that, you know, after they're done their undergrad and they show up in class and they're like, I switched from journalism. And I'm like, okay, so what brought you? And so we, you know, I'm speaking from the classroom environment. Some of them don't want, and I don't want to Jen, because I'm on team Jen here. I don't want to, you know, have any discrepancy with your answer, but I feel like those that are not ready to let it go. Like they want to add it, you know, to complement what they're doing. If that is you, identifying where you could see some potential overlap. So like this particular journalism student, was really great at documentation. Like writing was phenomenal. Like I didn't have to, there were very minor edits on papers, assignments, and that served her very well at her agency. Another one was a graphic designer, and the graphic designer was like, I love creating things and being artistic, but I also love helping people. And this student mentioned it in their interview, and the agency said, oh, we like would love for you to create our flyers, like our recruitment flyers for programs, or like help us design our logo, you know, nonprofit, you know. So if you can identify where that overlap exists between your first career, your second career, whatever it was, and bring that to the table with social work. And I think, Brian, you said this, like connect the dots all for them. Maybe that will spark something in them to say, oh yeah, you could also do this or work in this department or things like that.
It's the transferable skills.
Yeah.
That's, I mean, when I heard you say journalism, I immediately thought, I bet you that person asks really good questions. You know, I mean, but I'm a career counselor. That's what I do. I'm like, oh, you're good at that, I bet, you know, like that. But sometimes people need someone from the outside to do that for them. But really, that's the most important thing. That's the whole thing. You look at this job description and it says, you must be able to do this, this, this. You have to think about why and how do I know how to do this? And if it came from your other degree, good for you. Go for it. I mean, honestly, because that just tells a better story. But yeah, I immediately was like, oh, I bet you those are the transfer. And I was thinking about the flyers. I was thinking about they could probably do a website, update it. I was like, boom, 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 done. Put it on there. But you don't have to put all of it. You just put on the stuff that's relatable and transferable. Because otherwise, you're not making sense to them because you're not connecting it for them.
And the job description too is no one's ever going to fit the job description 100%. I'll tell you that right now. So please do not stress out about that piece. Trust me. Nobody's going to fit it 100%. So no need for you to be like, oh, I'm not going to apply for this job because I'm missing A, B, and C. Go for it. You know, just like Jen O'Connor said, like, just go for it. What's the worst that can happen, right? You're in the same place where you started. And it's going to help you build that confidence anyway. And you might even surprise yourself on, you know, getting a call back, right? Or like, or getting an interview, or maybe even actually getting that job that you didn't think you weren't gonna get. So I just, you know, if I can give any advice in that regard or recommendations, like, don't limit yourself based on the job description. Go for it. Trust me, I get people applying for jobs all the time, and I say to myself, I'm kind of curious what they were thinking, but hey, good for them that they went for it, right? Like, and there are some that I'm like, interesting background. Didn't think somebody from that background would apply for this job, but it makes sense, right? So again, have no fear. Have no fear.
Well, and like I like to say, I hear this from alumni, and I like to say to students all the time, you can do anything. I mean, Brian was saying before we even walked in, or before all of you guys joined us, he's like, I'm probably the only, person that didn't go do social work, with a social work degree. Totally not true. And so you can do so many different jobs with your social work degree. It's just about those transferable skills. I have so many people in different alums across the spectrum that like have different careers, and they say every single day they use their social work degree. So I'd love to talk a little bit about cover letters. And Brian, give us some tips about cover letters. What should it cover? What should it cover in the cover letter? And how best to get yourself seen from that cover letter?
Yeah, for sure. So cover letters, in the way that I see cover letters is cover letters should be a way to complement the resume. Cover letters should actually be a way for you to show the company, the manager, the recruiter, whoever is looking at this, right? Giving them a little piece of you that's beyond just the resume. So I would recommend, maybe making it a little more personalized, right? Like, I can't, I'm interested in this job because, and maybe there's a personal story behind it, right? And like, I also would recommend it not being too wordy too, right? Because again, people are scanning these things, but I think a real solid paragraph, right, on why you're interested in the job and putting a little bit of a personal touch on it to really just give the person who's reading it a little window into who you are, beyond just the job experience on the resume. And that's how I would structure it. I would really structure it as more of, again, more personalized, why you're interested in the role, and again, and don't write it just to write it. Like, if you're going to do a cover letter, do a cover letter. If you're going to write it just to write it, I recommend just not doing it. Because again, it's going to be fluff that somebody's going to read or go through and be like, oh, okay, right? But you want it to have an impact. So that's what I think you have to decide, whether or not you want to do one or not. I know some companies will say they want one. For one, sometimes people send them, sometimes they don't. It doesn't matter to me either way as a recruiter. But when I do see them, it's the thoughtful ones that stick out in my mind, and the ones that are more personalized and give me a window into who this person is.
Great. Looks like Jen O'Connor, did you want to add on anything to that?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, do it. I have a presentation I'm doing for Friday with a bunch of first and second year undergrads. And it what's that? There's a meme that just says, don't fear, just do it, and just do it. And just do it, because it rounds out what you're trying to say in your resume, right? So I always tell the students, like, think about, like, if this job is a $60,000 job, are you really gonna like sweat 17 sentences and potentially not get to tell your story for 17 sentences? I'm like, please step it up for yourself. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, calm down and just do it and get over it. And you can find breakdowns of what should be in each paragraph and stuff like that. But I'm 17 sentences. I'm like, come on, just do it. And you will never find an employer that says no cover letters. You will never find that person. So like, why are we pretending that this is a thing? Just do it. Just do it. That's all I can say. It's a nice way to tell your story, and I mean, that's a second way to tell your story. You've got the resume and you've got the cover letter, and you want them to understand it kind of connects. I tell the students, it's like, a resume can be very black and white, but the resume kind of becomes a little bit more color. The cover letter becomes a little bit more colorful and more 3D. So I think it's a missed opportunity if you don't do it. So that's my 2 cents.
And Jen Parga, Katya had a really great question about, whether if there is a way to go too personal in the cover letter. Yes, it can depend on the employer, nonprofit, hospital, that kind of things. But can you speak to how appropriate you might find it when folks share honestly in cover letters about their personal motivations for wanting to do this work?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's tactful is not the right word, but I think there's a way you can express, like, I have lived experience in the focus or emphasis of this organization, or kind of like your story of what brought you into social work. I think I might want to say it depends. I've had students overshare in interviews and it did not go well. But I've also had students that were able to explain how their experience with whatever population or their own lived experience has now been processed, and they are able to have the regular or regulation, self-regulation that they need and the coping skills and all that. And I'm not saying you need to share that, but that's something to consider for yourself. You might be drawn and attracted to working with a certain population based on your lived experience, but the day in and day out of working with the population is different. So I guess I'm like short answer and long answer. Short answer is it depends. Long answer is I already gave it.
Perfect. So, especially as I'm sure there are plenty of students in our audience here that are nearing graduation next May. So congratulations. But as we approach those months, Brian, is there anything, prior to graduation, students should be looking or how much time prior to graduation should students be looking to submit applications?
Yeah, I mean, if I'm kind of going back to when I graduated, I would say I think it's pretty safe to start, looking like, I would even say like maybe 2 months before, right? I mean, what's the harm in just seeing what's out there and starting to apply for jobs and testing the market, right? And seeing, seeing what that is, seeing what that's like. And I think too, there's nothing necessarily wrong with also, I see this all the time, right? I see a, degree graduating May 2022. And I'm like, okay, great. So that's when they're targeted to graduate. And that's fantastic, right? And I can already see that on there on the resume. But yeah, I would say for sure, I don't think there's anything wrong with starting a couple months before and really looking at what's out there and starting to get that practice, right? I mean, one of the things I would definitely recommend too is like, even if it might not be the job that your number one job or the job you're most interested in, I would and they still want to interview, practice. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with taking an interview and practicing. Like, I am very happy in the job that I'm in right now, but I'll be very honest, I still take some interviews here and there. And the reason for that is it keeps my interviewing skills fresh. So I definitely think like 2 months before, I think is pretty adequate for sure. Nothing wrong with getting a little head start.
Perfect. And Jen Parga.
I just wanted to put in the clinical plug, even though I'm not clinical, to like, don't should on yourself. So if you right now are like, oh, I should do that. Like, if you don't do it 2 months before, don't, like, you're setting up an expectation. So just if it happens and you're looking, I actually have, and I'm sure others do, but like a search ping through LinkedIn. So if you set your criteria on what you're looking for and you get an email and then you're like, oh, I can look now because I got pinged based on like letting that technology work for you. Yeah, that's all I wanted to say. Don't shit on yourself.
But I also, Jen Parga, want to add on. Sophia had asked about supervision and licensure, and we will be covering in April. It's going to practically be like the month of supervision. We have not only do we have the monthly topic in April for this series on, it's going to be on licensure and supervision. But also we are planning something a little bit larger with our partners at the California Society for Clinical Social Work. And we bring in the BBS for 2 straight hours and you ask anything and everything you want to know about getting your licensure here in California. And so it's always well attended. So definitely mid-April, we'll look out for your emails. We'll be saving the date. But Jen Parga, when students are looking for, supervision, they've been told it's better to get supervision at an agency, but I would like to work in private practice setting as their long-term goal. Do you have any opinion on agency versus private practice in supervision, and how would the application process differ?
I might have to read that second part of the question. Do I have an opinion on agency versus private practice to complete? No, because the person that will be doing your supervision will have their license. So whether they're a licensed supervisor within the private practice or within an agency or even external supervision, who is somebody who's not an employee at either one of those locations and is just providing external supervision for you, they could still sign off on your hours. So I think that's what you're asking, is if I do have a preference on either one of those. Um, if you do, if you are working in a private practice, it would be a part of a group, is what I'm hearing you say, I think. Does that help? Was it Sophia's question?
Yeah.
And the application process in terms of getting your license wouldn't be any different. You just need to meet the threshold of the supervision hours.
And you'll find in those April supervision workshops, definitely make sure, because I've had alumni who have had to wait a long time on the BBS. And so make sure you're getting everything in and you have completed applications and things like that. You can look in the meantime before our April sessions, you can definitely look at old recordings on Dworak-Peck Connect. We have a link to the one we did last spring and I think the last 2 or 3 years. So you can definitely see how things have changed and get some good tips and tricks while you wait for our April sessions on licensing. If we have probably about time for one or two more audience questions. So if you do have any audience questions, I'd love for you guys to get in one or two more. But I did see that Kay had asked, is there a way to meet with someone in the School of Social Work for specific career advisement? Or is it just connect .usc?
I have a suggestion on that, Amanda.
Perfect.
I always recommend that students go to the faculty list. You're able to see every faculty member at the school. You're able to see what their interests have been, what their expertise is or are, and send them an email. A lot of our faculty are going to be very responsive. I can't guarantee it's going to be 100% responsive, but if you pick a few and happen to hear back from one or two, and have a one-on-one meeting over Zoom and talk to them a little bit about your interests and find out a little bit about their career trajectory. And that kind of a thing could start a mentee-mentor relationship, perhaps. So, I always encourage students to take a look at the faculty list and just see who they may want to pose some questions to. You may have a faculty member already that you are having a good experience with, and that's always something that you can go to a regular one-on-one office hour, with. Our faculty have office hours. If you're not able to make a certain office hour, make that ask. Are you willing to meet at a different time that will work for me? The great majority of our faculty, want to meet with you and they want to assist you in any way. So that would be my advice.
And I would also piggyback on that and say there are alums like Brian here on DPC who are ready and willing to review your resume. I usually keep a list of alums that are really responsive on the platform and willing to outreach. But like I said earlier, find someone in your career field. You can look on DPC and see all the filters like industry experience, help topics. If you're a first gen, you can find another first gen alum, so someone who's kind of had some of those same lived experiences as you, and open that door to, like Josh said, a mentor-mentee relationship, or someone who's just willing to review your resume. So definitely, connect on Dworak-Peck Connect. Send messages, give people a couple days, but definitely send as many messages as you want. Start building those networks, which will be the March topic for this series. Start building out those networks now. So it's really important for you to get connected with, people in similar career trajectories or have lived similar experiences, or, something just about their profile fascinates you. So definitely make sure you're on the platform. It's very similar to LinkedIn. It's just specific to social work here. And as students, you have to make the first step. So it's kind of like, what is it, Bumble these days? I don't know. But as students, because of privacy, you have to make that first outreach to, say, Brian here. He can't message you until you message him. So it's really important for you to make that first step, look at his profile, check it out, and then just shoot a message and say, hey, Brian, I really saw that. I love that you're working at Visa and you've worked your way up here. Something about his profile that like stood out to you. Definitely make that connection to alums on the profile. I'm going to put the link again. But I know we're winding down here.
Sorry, Amanda, can I just add one
yes.
quick thing? Because I wanted to piggyback off of something that Jen Parga said before about LinkedIn. And I really want to emphasize, because that's a tool that I use day in and day out. I am on that tool every day. I have it on my phone, right? I'm like constantly.
That's how I connect with Brian.
That's how Amanda found me, right? Like case in point right there. So one of the things that I just wanted to quickly say, because I know we're getting a little tight on time and folks have some other questions. But one of the things that I wanted to quickly say with that is, if you can find out who's posting the job, right? And find that person on LinkedIn, send them a message. What's great about LinkedIn right now is you don't have to have like that premium, or premium service. You can, when you connect with people, you can now actually send a little message and send a little note along when you connect with people. So it gives you that opportunity to just give a little blurb, like Amanda was saying, like, hey, saw your profile, saw that you're doing this, would love to connect if you're open to connecting so that we can, network and chat, right? And I'll tell you, when you're genuine about that stuff, like I pretty much will connect with anyone who's genuine about connecting and wanting to network. I don't decline a lot of people. But I wanted to just throw that in there because I think that's another tidbit or another tip of a way that you can make those connections with folks at places that you want to work at.
Yeah, and Brian, if you don't mind, putting in your email or maybe your LinkedIn in the message box, because I think a couple of students might want to reach out to you. So as we kind of wind down here, I want to give our panelists just kind of one last opportunity to share kind of one last tip kind of on resumes and cover letters, maybe something Brian, for you, like you wish you had known, or something you learned over your career. And so just kind of one last, leave us with one last point as we wind down here. So Jen O'Connor.
How'd you give me the first one? Great. I'm just going to go back and say tailor. Like know the job description and tailor that thing like no one's business, and just treat that piece of paper like the salary that it's going to get you. So if it's a $60,000 job, think about that piece of paper like that, because that really could be part of it. And then please use that that smart resume tool, because seriously, Amanda and I put stuff in there for you. You've got good stuff in the Dworak-Peck Connect. You've got the resources to just use them, really. So tailoring, use your resources.
And Brian?
So yeah, I mean, I would say the biggest thing, biggest takeaway I would say from this is definitely tailor the resume. Trust me, do that master template resume. Have that as your master template. That's going to be the hardest piece of this, is writing that out. Once you write that out and once you write everything out, trust me, the rest is actually going to be a lot easier. And network.
Maybe I'll have you back for March, Brian. Jen Parga?
I'm not gonna lie. I was already thinking about that a minute.
Oh,
I love it.
I actually really loved what Brian said a little bit earlier about you don't have to check every box. Like you don't have to fit every part of the job description. And if there's something about it that excites you and you get energized by, I go by that kind of gut feeling, because you never know what's behind that door or where your journey in social work will take you. I never could have predicted being in academia right now. as I'm sure perhaps I'm going on a limb, Brian could have guessed being at Visa, 15 years later. So it's like, just go for it. Yeah, and just trust your gut.
Josh, do you want any last comments before I close us out?
Again, I encourage you all to reach out to your faculty members. It's always good to get to know them in an office hour. And from there, you can perhaps continue a mentorship relationship. But just really appreciate Jen, and Brian, and all of the great effort, the thoughts tonight. Just really appreciated the whole panel.
Perfect. Well,
Thank you all for having me.
Thank you, everyone. Again, we do these monthly. The next one is on December 8th at 5:30 p.m. It's on professionalism and ethics, and we have a great panel lined up. So be sure to check out. The January one is on interviewing, and the February one, I believe, is on getting a job with the government health services. I can't remember, Josh. And March is networking for social work month. And I think that one is going to be a really exciting one that we can kind of play around breakout rooms with and get folks connected with one another. So again, we do these monthly. If you have any suggestions or comments or questions, please feel free to reach out to Josh or I. I will send out in a few days the recording link. We'll put it on DPC for you, as well as a resource for the future, so you can kind of tune back in whenever you would like. Thank you so much for spending your Wednesday evening with us, and have a wonderful night, everyone. Fight on.